G'day, Binanceans, and welcome to this week's Binance Beach. It's been a pretty bruising week in the markets, and to break it all down and figure out what's going on and where we're off to next, we've got Zen joining us, mate. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me here. And yeah, it's not been the best week for the markets.
How are you feeling after the tariff announcements, the ups?
I feel
the
liberated.
downs? Yeah,
I do
you
not
feel
feel
liberated
liberated.
after Liberation Day.
Liberation Day. I mean, I don't know. I think the last few weeks or even months has been like, expect the unexpected. Like Trump is Trump, and you just never have any idea what's going to happen. So I'm just, yeah, I have very little hopes for the market. I'm just sitting on my hands, and long term, I'm very bullish. I'm just waiting.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be the mature take. and you can get so wrapped up in the short-term volatility. And geez, ever since I was Jan 22nd where we had the inauguration,
Pretty much, yeah.
it's just been non-stop. It feels like there's 2 or 3 major pieces of news coming out of the White House every business day, all week, right? Since Jan 22, it just hasn't stopped. And I know, like, I've definitely felt a lot of fatigue trying to keep up with that. And I too have given up. It's just too many pieces, like too much information. It's information overload.
Yeah.
And you just have to say, right, okay, calm down, zoom out. Let's think about the big picture and be happy with that. I can't time small moves. It's too hard.
It's impossible. I feel like many of us forgot what Trump was like his first term, because it was the same. It was just nonstop news cycles, all focused on him, all sorts of crazy mania. It's the same thing again this time around.
Yeah, for sure. Let's kick into our Bitcoin price update. We've got Bitcoin sitting around 83,000 US, which I think has been relatively resilient, particularly compared to the rest of the crypto market. And given how much has been wiped off the stock market as well, particularly in the last couple of days, I think Bitcoin still sitting in the 80s is not too bad. We've really been kind of range bound in this 80 to 90K period now for what feels like a couple of weeks. And obviously, we have kind of come down pretty significantly since these early Jan highs in that low 100 range. But yeah, across the rest of the market, there's some pretty bad carnage. Fear and greed still sitting down at 24, which to see Bitcoin in the 80K and a fear and greed of 24 still feels crazy to me. It still feels like, yeah, there's a lot of floor. There's a lot of support there for Bitcoin. ETH down nearly 10% on the week, XRP 11, nearly 12%. And from there, it's really just a bloodbath the rest of the way down the top 100. Yeah, what caused this sell-off? Do you want to jump into tariffs and why we are in such a brutal spot right now in crypto?
Yeah. I think it's like markets don't like uncertainty, and Trump is creating a lot of chaos and uncertainty. And I think with the tariffs, it just doesn't make sense. If the end goal is to just stick with these tariffs, it's like a lose-lose situation, creates a global trade war. Markets are just not going to love it. And so I think the bull case that I've seen is that, oh, it's part of some strategy or plan. It's like negotiations. They're not actually going to implement these crazy tariffs long term. If that happens, then yes, the market could turn around and be bullish. But the market is basically just reacting to what Trump is actually saying, which is going to slap these 10 to 100% tariffs on basically every country in the world, it's just not good. It's just not good. It's just not good for anyone.
Yeah, but it was successful in bringing down the 10-year yield, which is really important for the US government because of the deficit. And without trying to be a macro guy, trying to go into that too much, the US does need to refinance a big proportion of its $36 trillion worth of deficit in the near term, and bringing down the rates on 10-year bonds is going to help with that. So it feels like maybe that's a part of the strategy as well. But man, it's really hard to say what the intention is. The communication coming out of the White House seems to be really limited and very patchy and very back and forth. It's not consistent whatsoever. And so it makes it incredibly difficult from a market's perspective to try and predict what's going on with any kind of certainty. And then you see that press conference, is it yesterday or the day before, with a big poster of the tariffs. Like, this is theater and comedy at its best. and you just watch that red Darth
Yeah,
Vader
just big
lightsaber
candle.
death candle in real time. It's just wild. It really feels unprecedented.
Yeah. I mean, he made his name as a reality TV show star, so it kind of does make sense from that perspective, but it does feel surreal that the president of the United States is doing this. Like, he slapped tariffs on some islands that are uninhabited. Like, literally no people live there. He's like, yep, 10% tariff for you penguins.
Crazy.
I don't know. But I agree with what you said, that like Bitcoin sticking around at 83K, being above 80K is like, it's pretty bullish actually that we're holding this despite everything else, despite the stock market crashing so much. I don't know. I feel pretty good about it still.
Yeah, it does feel like the kind of scenario that a few years would have seen a 60, 50% drawdown and like a real kind of start of a winter. But yeah, I mean, let's zoom in or double click on that question. Is this cycle over? Are we back to a bear market, or do we have more bullish upside to go?
I mean, yeah, it's impossible to know, but I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago actually, because I was thinking about it, and basically I came to the conclusion that I think there's like a 25% chance that the cycle is over, which means 75-80% chance it's not. And I mean, how do you come up with numbers like that? It's all guesswork. It's like educated guessing. And so I basically looked at all the reasons to be bullish and the reasons to be bearish. And bullish reasons are like, you know, regulation and the SEC dropping cases and stablecoin act and adoption and ETFs and strategic reserve and all this kind of bullish, actual bullish stuff. And then the reasons to be bearish are Trump being Trump, fears of recession, global trade war, macro suffering, yada yada yada. But on the balance of it, it's, to me, it's still it's been a very, very bullish past 6 months for crypto. Hopefully the rest of the market resolves and we hit new all-time highs, I think, for Bitcoin late this year or early next year, but it's all guessing at the end of the day.
And an all-time high is really only a 20 or 30% move for Bitcoin
Yeah.
from here, just with very quick maths in my head, right?
Yeah.
Which is not that far away. Like, we're not talking about the kind of bear market bottom that we had at 17K and that moved to 100. Like, we're still very close and we're still sitting above last cycle's all-time high. So really very close to uncharted territory there as well.
Yeah. I think the reason it feels so bad for so many people is because Bitcoin dominance is so high. So ETH is struggling, Sol is struggling, XRP is struggling, alts, memes, NFTs, basically everything other than Bitcoin is struggling at the moment.
Yeah, you feel great if you're a Bitcoin maxi right now.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, unless you're a gold bug. In
Yeah,
that
that
case,
too.
you're cheering and you're rubbing it in to everybody you know that gold is hitting all-time highs. I mean, what could be your short to midterm outlook then? What do you think we're going to kind of see from here in regards to, do we move up, do we move down, and what are those catalysts that you're looking for?
I mean, if I had to pick, I would say over the next few months, we probably range between 75 and 90K, like basically where we've been. I could definitely see us dropping a little more. But it's hard to see a specific catalyst that gets us all the way, back up to new all-time highs. It's not impossible. Like, this trade war stuff could resolve, and the strategic reserve could come to fruition, and other countries could say they're buying Bitcoin, and all of a sudden that's enough to rocket us to all-time highs. But I just feel like we're in for like a few more months of chop before we then hopefully resume up only. Hopefully I'm wrong, but and it goes up sooner, but we'll see.
What are the key differences for you in 2025 feeling and maybe like 2021? Like, we had the COVID crash, right? And the stock market wiped out trillions and crypto wiped out billions. And we had that real V down and then that V-shaped recovery, right? How does this compare to your experience then and what you were feeling through that period and how you're feeling now?
Yeah, it feels different in the sense that I think back then there was like stimulus money, the economy was like, money printer was printing, and like there was all this money flowing in. And so that macro element was very different to where we are now. We could be there soon, but we're not there yet. And then also just like the retail excitement, like NFTs were going crazy. Even when like in June, July, when crypto had dropped from its when Bitcoin had dropped from its April peak, and just like, you know, it was in this V shape, like you said. NFTs were still going gangbusters, and so there was all this excitement. Retail was still joining. People were having fun. It was getting like mainstream attention. We're not really getting that right now. It's like it's crime season. People are getting burned on meme coins. There's this just sense of despair, or people have lost their inspiration towards crypto a little bit, and so that's the big difference. But then the other big difference is the regulatory side, which is completely different now than back then. We have there's this report I read the other day about like they polled like 350 institutional investors and companies, and 84% of them said that they either are or plan to integrate stablecoins into their workflow, which is just crazy to think about. And I think like 59% said they want to allocate like 5% or more to buying Bitcoin or crypto on the balance sheet, which is just crazy to think about. That it would have been unheard of back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, this was the wish list, right? 5 or 10 years ago for a lot of people. And we're now there, and we're now seeing this news, and the number's not going up. And I think it's easy to get caught up in that short-term like frustration around, man, like this is what is supposed to happen, and we're not at all-time highs yet. But hey, I mean, that's good. It's more time to accumulate if that's your strategy. And there's more time to buy Bitcoin sub 100, more time to buy ETH sub 2K. Like, I guess for me, flipping it and looking at that perspective and understanding that when it's on sale, that's your opportunity. And yeah, making sure that you're not too emotionally caught up in it as well, which is a really key part of it.
Yeah.
I think, and I'd be interested in your take on this as well. That illustrates this incredible split that we have right now between institutional sentiment and retail sentiment. And the contrast with 2021, I think, is really stark, because in 2021, there was not that much institutional interest in crypto. MicroStrategy was just kicking off. We didn't have any Bitcoin treasury companies. The administration had a fairly negative view on crypto, and it was entirely retail sentiment that was bullish. And it came off the back of stimmy checks. It came off the back of free money. It was everyone's opportunity to take something that they hadn't really earned and gamble it or punt it or buy some assets if they really saw what was kind of coming in terms of the amount of liquidity that was about to flow into crypto and flow into assets in general. You think about property, you think about stocks, think about everything in COVID, right? It was an everything bubble. It was wild. And now in 2025, we have the perfect inverse of that, where retail sentiment is so poor. I heard a stat the other day, to be fact checked, that on average, people are now paying 51% of their income towards their mortgage. That is mind-blowing.
That's wild,
right? Insane. Mortgage stress traditionally was considered 30% of your income or above, and you were in mortgage stress. And now 51% is the average. Insane, right? And between cost of living, cost of power, cost of groceries, like the punter, the everyman is struggling. It's a brutal world out there. But then on the institutional side, you have treasury companies, you have strategy, you have all of this incredible bullish news. You have the president addressing the Digital Asset Summit. It could not be more bullish for institutions. And it almost makes me a little sad that there's so much bullish news right now when retail is hurting so bad. And, you know, acquiring Bitcoin or just investing in general is more difficult than it's been for many, many years.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And that 51%, like you said, it's the average. There are people at 70%, 80% of their income is going towards mortgage or rent, which is, there's definitely like a cost of living crisis and a housing crisis in most countries in the world. Australia is probably one of the worst really right now. Yeah, it's exactly like you said, the disconnect between retail and institutional. It's never felt worse. And even like crypto Twitter is like people are depressed and destitute, and but then it's just the most bullish environment ever, and for institutions. And so I think it is an opportunity for people who have the money and the means to start acquiring. Like you said, it's on sale, it's on discount. If you can, and I always recommend to anyone that talks to me about like wanting to get into crypto and what do they buy, I just say, just like set aside whatever money you can a week or a month and just buy Bitcoin with it. If it's $100, if it's $50, if it's $500, if it's $1,000, whatever you can afford, do that. And then just come back in 10 years and thank me. It's basically my advice, because it's the best strategy for almost everyone. It's just that most of the people that tune into the space every day are like degenerates thinking they can outperform Bitcoin by trading alts or memes or something else, which some people can, but most people can't do that.
Yep, it's a lesson to learn when you enter this space for sure. Can I outperform Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's tricky. Let's jump on the bullish macro news. This week, Larry Fink released his annual letter to BlackRock investors, BlackRock shareholders, and this was a great read. This was really fun actually to dive into what one of the most influential men in global finance thinks is going on in real time, right? But there were two key call outs for crypto. The whole thing's worth a read, but the two really key call outs for crypto that I'd love to get your thoughts and your take on. The first was a call out about Bitcoin, and it was about Larry asked the question, can Bitcoin eat away at the US dollar's reserve status? Now, given BlackRock's activity in the space, given the success of the ETFs, given a lot of the language that Larry's used in interviews separate from this document, you would have thought that there might have been quite a bullish case for Bitcoin. There might have been, some details about how this is a scarce asset, how it's digital gold, X, Y, Z. But this was a relatively short call out about how the US deficit and the US federal debt held by the public was increasingly of concern to obviously the administration and to money managers like Larry, and how if the US doesn't get its debt under control and the deficit keeps ballooning, then there is a threat to the US dollar's reserve status from Bitcoin. I thought it was really interesting how this was presented and how short this section actually was. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on your take on Larry's thoughts on Bitcoin too.
Yeah, I agree with you again that like it would have been nice to see more on Bitcoin given the ETFs and everything else going on, but it's still an interesting point in case that he makes about just even comparing it to the US dollar as reserve status. Like that is kind of elevating Bitcoin to such a significant pedestal that I think will have weight behind it. It is also though interesting and in contrast to what I think Trump or Besant said about the US dollar and stablecoins, about how they want stablecoin regulation because they think it'll help the US dollar maintain its reserve status. If they get hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars of stablecoins denominated in US dollars out there, which then have to be backed by US treasuries, that will help the reserve status. And I think that is a very compelling argument, and it's going to be hard to fight against. Part of like I was researching stablecoins last week, and one of the things that I saw was Tether, the company, is like the seventh largest holding, has the seventh largest holdings of US treasuries of anyone in the world, and that's like they beat out countries. They have more than Canada, they have more than Germany, they have more than Japan, and so like it just puts into context how crazy stablecoins can be. So I like the idea of Bitcoin eating away at the US dollar reserve status, but I am skeptical of it largely because of stablecoins.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I'm watching for, which I think would be really interesting, is whether there's any address or attention put by the Trump administration on the market regulations in Europe, which potentially cut Tether and US dollar stablecoins out of that market and will be moving crypto businesses and individuals towards a euro stablecoin instead of a US dollar stablecoin. That's a fascinating little battle that I think we're maybe going to see in the next kind of year or two, because you're right, that stablecoin dominance is absolutely key. And US dollar now is used, I think, might be less than 60% or less than 50% of global trade, but still 97 or 98% worth of stablecoin volume globally. Yeah. Does the euro or whatever the circle version of the euro issue stablecoin start to eat away at that share? The local stablecoins start to eat away at that share if there's attention put towards local regulatory capture? And then is there a response by the administration to try and protect those local businesses in the same way that, there's action towards protecting, Twitter or Facebook or Meta, or Instagram in local markets too, where there's interventions and then there's pushback around free speech. Is there going to be pushback around freedom of money? That's, I think, a really interesting one to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's part of the whole larger Euro versus US battle or whatever that's going on right now.
Mm.
Obviously, Trump's not making any friends over there, but even before Trump, in terms of like tech companies and like the regulations that Euro was placing on them, and there's always some friction there. And I think this is just going to exacerbate that. And I think that yes, we will see some sort of it'll come to a head at some point, and we'll see if US dollar's dominance can remain where it is or it gets chipped away at.
Yeah, or whether a multipolar world is what we're moving towards, and that comes with its own set of currency challenges. But hey, putting things on chain makes it very easy to move between currencies, swapping between USDC and again, I forget what the euro dollar stablecoin is.
USDE, let's
Oh,
just say that.
yeah, like
Not
it's
USDE, EC.
yeah,
EUC, yeah.
EURC.
Yeah.
I think it's something like
Yeah.
that. Like it's going to be so easy. It's going to be so seamless. It's going to be really cool to see.
Yeah.
That leads us into, yeah, like tokenization as democratization. This section is fascinating. This outlined exactly what Larry is seeing in terms of how blockchain is going to start to play a role in traditional finance and what they're trying to lead, what they're trying to work on. And I think it explains why Larry has been so bullish on ETH and on other layer ones and on stable coins. This just stepped out his vision perfectly. To give you guys a TLDR, but I do recommend reading it in full. It was basically this idea that putting real world assets on chain, gold, property, stocks, whatever it is, tokenizing assets is going to make settlement better, faster, and cheaper. And it's going to open up markets not only within the US, but potentially for global access. And how fractional things are going to be is going to open up and democratize access. How fast and cheap it's going to be to access this stuff is going to democratize access. And really just laid out how Larry thinks tokenization and blockchain is going to change the current financial systems that have been in place for such a long time. It's very hard to read this and not be pretty bullish on some of these ideas about what blockchain can bring to traditional finance. What was your takeaway, Zen? What did you take away from this?
Yeah, like you said, it's hard not to be bullish. I've always the part to me that is the most bullish and that really stands out is the sort of unlocking of global liquidity. It's like the
Mm,
ability for anyone in any country in the world to invest in something from anywhere else in the world, and in an easy,
mm,
quick, instantaneous settlement type of way, trustless as well. I mean, real estate is the obvious example. It's like if I wanted to invest in real estate in South Dakota in America or something, for instance, there's no real easy way for me to do that right now. I would have to like there'd be currency conversion fees. I would finding an agent over there to find me a property, or maybe I could find a local real estate fund or something like that. But it's not easy. And if
mm.
we can unlock that liquidity, and same goes for every country in the world, then I think for every asset class, it's gonna be good things. It'll make markets more efficient. It'll make them more equitable, more open, more accessible. There's going to be pushback from governments, and there's especially with real estate, but from a variety of things, and those are hurdles that will have to be overcome. But I do see it as the future as well, and I think it's a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, and I tell this story a bit, but a couple of months ago, I bought a stock on ComSec and I paid $30 transaction fee. Like
Jesus, yeah,
insane. And then I still can't buy stuff outside of business hours. Like
yeah. It's
insane. It
stocks on chain
really
makes
is.
so much sense.
Ah,
Yeah,
it really is just magnitudes better. Absolutely
yeah.
magnitudes better, faster and cheaper.
That's
It's
the thing. It has to
incomparable,
be as
right?
well. I think for
Mm.
people to like, for companies to update their systems, for people to migrate from an existing model to a new one, it does need to be an order of magnitude or more better. And it is. It is 100 times faster and cheaper and et cetera, et cetera.
Let's pivot to ETFs. We haven't looked at these on the show for just a little while, so I think it's good to check in. There's one key thing or one key phenomenon that I want to point out, and I think this comes back to we have this incredibly bullish write up by Larry about why tokenization is so important, and clearly BlackRock is working on ETH. They're also working on Solana. They're not just on ETH as a layer one, but I think there seems to be an opinion there that ETH as a market leader is a great place to start or is a great place to go. And when you look at the TVL of ETH and the liquidity of ETH and the amount of assets on that chain, like I can see why on the outside, right? That's where you start. But from an ETF perspective, we're just not really seeing ETH take off yet. And the key chart to look at is I'll pull this up and make it a bit bigger for you guys. The assets under management of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, like obviously back at the start, we had the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, and that had a big old sell off. And then, over time, we've seen the assets under management really kind of climb up. And this has been an incredibly bullish story, right? Really positive story. Bitcoin ETFs, I think they're outperforming gold ETFs in volume in the first 12 months. Wow, right? Incredibly bullish. And then you flick over to the ETH version of this chart, and it's just like hard to watch. Up here, obviously with ETH again, and the Grayscale Ethereum Trust, which had a pretty significant kind of sell off at the start, we're still sitting below the total assets under management now than we were when these ETFs launched. And so, what's your take on this? Why has ETH just not seen the institutional or the ETF inflows that we've seen in Bitcoin, or that we came to expect or we came to hope? Why is it so stubborn? Why is it so slow?
Well, so I think it's because the ETH price is so bad. And it's very counterintuitive because traditional investing thoughts are that when price is lower, you want to be buying and et cetera, and you sell when the prices are high. But the best marketing for anything is number go up. And so I think when ETH price is going up, more people are paying attention to it, and they're like, hey, maybe we should get some ETH exposure. It's traditional FOMO. It's like people will FOMO into ETFs or the token or anything. And so because ETH price action has been so bad for so long, I think it's just like got people depressed and fearful and anxious and just not really wanting to, even like money managers, not to feel foolish, because if they're buying it and then it just keeps going down, it's like it's not a good look for them. And so it's a bit of a risk for some of them to take it, hoping that it will go back up. I think it's a good risk to take, and I think that it will eventually come back up as BTC dominance drops, as monetary policy changes and more liquidity enters the markets and all yada yada yada. But I think that's the main reason why the ETFs have just struggled, is because the price has been going down, and just when price goes up, people get more excited by it.
And specifically, right, like the price of Solana was going up a lot. And so it might have been really hard to make a contrarian bet against the Solana ecosystem, which was experiencing such incredible growth, mostly off the back of meme coins, but even still was demonstrating why it's a really legitimate competitor. And it may be the ETH killer that so many layer ones have been promised to be. But with meme coin season over, it'll be fascinating to see whether Solana can maintain that momentum, or whether it moves in the direction that ETH has. Because ETH had that 2021 NFT blow up, right? You had meme coins on ETH, you had NFTs on ETH. It tested the infrastructure, and you had this big explosion on chain. And now we've moved into like a period where it's back to those fundamental DeFi protocols, your Uniswaps, your Aavos, like those are the ones doing really well. They get less attention and they're less dramatic. There's less number go up there, but they're ticking away and they're doing a great job. Solana's had its meme coin season. I'm not sure if you think meme coins are coming back or not. I'd love your take on that too, but it will be interesting to see if now Solana slots back down into that slow grind that ETH is in at the moment, with building that core infrastructure with, products like Jupiter or, Jito, like being really the focus, and it being far less exciting from a price appreciation perspective, but building far more long-term value. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the differences is that ETH had DeFi summer before NFTs, and so it was very natural for them to go back to it. Solana hasn't really had a big DeFi moment. Like, it's definitely had moments, and it's like there's some great DeFi infrastructure on Solana. But in terms of like TVL and getting significant liquidity, that they haven't really had that. It's been the meme coin mania that really took it off this last year. Even if you look at stablecoin volumes, I think, or TVL, I think like ETH has like 50 to 55%. Tron has like 30, 36%. Solana probably has like 2 or 3%. And so like that kind of tells the story to me. It will be interesting to watch to see whether that increases and whether Solana's because it is fast, it is cheap, it does make sense for DeFi activity to happen on there and other activity. So it'll just be interesting to watch whether they will gain significant market share away from ETH and the L2s and other chains, especially because there are more competitors coming out now that are competing with Solana on speed and scale and all that kind of stuff. In terms of whether meme coins are going to come back or not, not the same. I don't think they'll come back the same way. I think it's kind of like NFTs in 21, where we had that crazy absolute mania, and then NFTs are still around, and certain NFTs still perform well in certain pockets, and there's moments where they outperform. I think meme coins will settle into a similar rhythm where we're probably not going to have that true pump fun era absolute mania again, but there'll be moments when meme coins do well. Certain meme coins will still outperform. But yeah, I don't think we go back to the craziness, which is, I think, a good thing.
Yeah, me too. Were you surprised that meme coin season didn't overflow into ETH layer 2s more? I guess it comes back to a liquidity thing, because when all the action is on Solana, that's probably where you launch your meme coin, right? Like that's where Trump launched his meme coin, and you watched liquidity drain out of everything else. But were you surprised that more of that didn't move on to ETH layer 2s?
A little. I think there's still a fragmentation issue with ETH layer 2s. And I think if there was a chain that was going to capture it, it would be Base. And it kind of did for a little while. It had like the AI agent meta, which were mostly traded like meme coins anyway. It had a little bit of a meta with other meme coins doing well. Farcaster has like the Clanker ecosystem, and there's a bit of activity there. But it's such a small fraction compared to what happened on Solana. And I do think it's a liquidity thing, like you said. It's also just an ease of use thing. So many people, when Base season was taking off, because I was talking about it a lot and trying to get people involved early, they were like, I don't even know how to use Base. Or I just have Phantom Wallet on my phone. Like, how do I even, they'd never even use ETH, no EVM chain. And so like that definitely hurt the adoption. I think that will get solved as time goes on, and the user experience will be very easy on all chains eventually. But yeah, I think that's a big reason why Solana just captivated so much of the market shares, because it was just so easy for people to download it on their phone and just get started.
And Phantom's such a great product.
It is. It's so good. Yeah.
Well, any closing thoughts? Do you want to leave us with some hopium before we log off and let people enjoy their weekend? Yeah, any long-term bullishness you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's going to $1 million and beyond. It's like it's hard not to be macro bullish on Bitcoin. Whether it takes a year for a new all-time highs, 6 months, 2 or 3 years, I don't know. No one knows, but I feel very confident that it will eventually happen, and we'll hit new all-time highs, then highs, and it's the best asset class there is. It's scarce, it's on chain, it's provable. There's so many benefits to it. I think that will flow to ETH and Solana and other L1s and L2s as well, because they can do things that Bitcoin can't do. And if Larry is talking about the tokenization of everything and bringing everything on chain, like that will need to happen on a blockchain. And I don't know, I'm incredibly bullish. It's just the next couple of months, I have no idea. The next few months is anyone's guess. But I mean, I'm not bearish. I'm like, yeah, I'm not selling. I'm just sitting on my hands basically and waiting for the market to show its colors.
Yeah, it's such a short period of time. A few months will be over like that, and then we'll be sitting at OzCryptoCon, maybe have another all-time high at OzCryptoCon.
That would be great.
That'd be really, really fun. Hey, thanks so much for joining us, mate. Great to hear your takes, and yeah, we'll have you back on the show very soon.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
All right, guys, before we wrap up, I will finish with a quick shout out for our Build Your Strategic Reserve campaign. There's so many little rewards and benefits from this if you're looking to build your strategic Bitcoin reserve or crypto asset stockpile. This is a really great way to go about it. There's 50 USDT worth of rewards. 40 USDT of those are actually token vouchers. So by completing a task, you get tokens. And then there's another 10 USDT worth of trading vouchers here just for completing tasks. We've got the link for this one in the show notes. So click on Start Building. It'll take you through. Complete the tasks, claim your rewards in Rewards Hub. It's really that easy. You have until the 8th to get this done. So please go ahead and do that. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, and let us know who you'd love to see on the show next week. We'll leave you with a disclaimer. And thanks so much for tuning in, Binanceans. We will catch you next week. Please note that this discussion includes insights from non-affiliated third parties and key opinion leaders. Binance provides this platform for informational and educational purposes only and is not responsible for any content or insights provided. This information should not be considered as financial, tax, or investment advice from Binance.